Hi everyone, Hannah here. Welcome back to my channel, Handmade by Hannah. Today I am working on putting a quilt together. And one of the things that I've noticed is there's not a whole lot of videos on tying quilts. I actually don't really like to quilt the traditional way with all the stitching and everything that goes on the top, connecting all the layers together. I actually really like to tie the quilts. There's a couple of reasons for that. Number one, I don't have room for the big long arm quilters. My machine does not like having that much fabric fed through it. As well as I am not a big fan of the heaviness and the feel of quilts that are heavily quilted. I don't feel like they actually mold around my body, and so I actually feel colder with a quilt that has been quilted versus a quilt that has been tied. A quilt that has been tied actually has a lot more drape to it, and so it actually falls around your body a lot easier, and so keeps you warmer because it insulates the warmth around your body rather than having more pockets that are open on either side of your body to let that cold air sit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and get started and lay out. This is my backing, so I have that. The backing is actually, both sides are the same because it was woven like this with the threads were already dyed these colors, and then it was woven in the check pattern. And then I'm going to put the batting, and then I'll put the quilt top on. So this quilt top is actually I finished yesterday, and it is for my new niece who was born on the 3rd. Super excited to have another niece in the family. We're both sides, my husband's side and my side, are very boy heavy. So anytime a girl is born, we're like, woohoo! Especially me, I can make all the girly stuff. So yay. Anyway, so let's go ahead and get started. The backing on the top, we've got the batting in the middle, and then we've got the quilt top up here. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to baste it. I actually like using the big safety pins, because you don't, with a quilt this size, you don't need to really take a whole lot of shoot, I lost my train of thought. I'm like, skip this part. um when you do the pinning with a quilt this size, you don't need a whole lot of pins. Kind of one in each corner, one kind of in the middle of each motif, and you're good to go. Because when we're tying it, we are going to be moving it around a little bit to manipulate the needle and the thread and the yarn, but it will, with the pins holding it together, it's already laid out, it's already straight, so you don't need to worry about things shifting. So let's go ahead and do that. And when I'm working on a quilt, whether I'm basting it or actually tying it, I actually like to work from the corner out both ways. So that way, basically, I'm working from this corner out this way and to that far corner. Okay, so we have got it basted with the pins. I've also cut off the excess batting both on this side and on the bottom. That way I'm not tripping on it when I'm going around and everything. So now we are getting ready to tie. So I like to use a pretty heavy duty crewel needle. See if that'll focus on that. With a pretty good size eye. Now the material I like to use cotton, silk, or linen or hemp thread. And when I say thread, more weaving weight. So this, for instance, is an 8-2 weaving cotton, and it is on the heavier side, but it's not, but it's got some heft to it. So it's not going to break like sewing thread is going to. Now, if I wanted to do the big stitch quilting by hand on this, I would probably use something like this as well. I don't have a big enough hoop right now to do that, although that is something that I do want to try because I think that would still give me the same flexibility in the quilt as tying it does. So we're going to go ahead and get started, and I'll explain where I'm going to be placing the ties and how I do that. And there will be a close-up on how I tie after this clip. So one of the things that you want to be aware of is to plan out where you want to tie, where you want to put your ties. Now on this one, for instance, now you don't have to have them super close together like quilting, but what you do want to do is you want to have them within about 4 to 6 inches because that will keep everything from shifting, especially later on in the life of the quilt. It'll keep the batting from falling apart and making, you know, kind of clumps in there. As you go, it'll keep things together a little better, but still give you the flexibility that you want. So let's go ahead and get started. All right. So one of the reasons I like the crewel needles is because they actually have a very sharp point, and you want that to be able to get through all of the layers, especially if you're going through some of the where corners meet up. You want to be able to have that to be able to get through. Now sometimes if you're using just a regular needle rather than a curved needle, you may want to have a thimble of some kind. I normally am fine with it, mainly because with a quilt like this size, it's easy to manipulate enough to get it under there and through. So I start by getting a decent length of thread and thread it on there. There we go. Okay, So now I'm going to start this corner just like I was doing with the basting. Okay, and I'm actually going to keep these on the colored portions, mainly because I want the white to show up. And so we go in and then come up. Now this side is a little easy because you don't have to, you can actually lift it up, you know, on the edge there. But once you get in the center, I'll show you my trick of getting it through without using the traditional curved quilting needle. So you want to leave on either end about 3-inch tail. Now we're going to do a whole bunch all at once and then clip them and then tie them and then clip them short. So I'm going to do a whole bunch going along here. Oops. And if you do want to mark where you're putting these just for, you know, keeping things fairly the same and everything, that's up to you. I don't really feel the need for it. I just eyeball it. Especially if you have like a pretty dense motif of quilting squares, it's usually not that big of a deal. Okay, so that's part of the edge. Now I'm going to go to some of the center motifs, and I'm going to do one in each of these squares. When I get to the point where I can't lift it up underneath and get my hand under there, what I'll do is I'll get to the point where I'm getting the table, lift it up, and then use my other finger to kind of pull down as I'm lifting the needle up to get that angle. Just be careful you don't stab yourself. Now that we have a whole bunch of the threads in there and everything, we're going to actually snip in between. And again, you want to leave 2 to 3 inch tails on each of these. We're just going to go through here. Oops. Yeah, make sure you actually cut them and not pull them out because it's hard to get them back in. Just get your needle out again. By the way, the pattern on this is from the very first block magazine by Missouri Star Quilt Company. And I've made this before as a baby quilt for a little girl that was born in our church not that long ago. In fact, she was actually just born a couple days ago. But I gave the quilt a couple months ago for the baby shower. And this, while this isn't a traditional baby size quilt, I made it a little bit larger, mainly so that she could have some good use out of it as she grows. And I use a couple of different fat quarters in these 3 came as a pack. And then I had some of this left, and then I just had white for the background and sashing. Okay, so now tying. What I found, and I did some research on this about 3 years ago, is a double square knot is really what works best. It holds through many different washings, and it really secures itself, especially with the doubleness. And basically what you do is you do, each time you do the knot, you thread it through twice. Okay, so that's one. We're going to pull it tight, and then we're going to go the opposite way to make that square knot, but we're going to do 2 loops again. So 1, 2, make sure that bottom one is secure, and then pull it tight and snug. And that should not come loose if you've done it right. And if you kind of pull at it with a needle underneath there, If it's starting to loosen up, then you've done it wrong. It's ended up, it's loosening up, you've done a granny knot, not a square knot. So basically a square knot is where you've got your loop around, both loops are around this way. And so the threads that are going this way, they go under, and the threads that are going this way go over, and both threads on both sides. So basically what you have is you've got 4 corners, and that you pull that tight and it makes that square knot, and it's very, very hard to get undone. Which is why you want to make sure that you have them placed where you want to. Otherwise, you'll have to snip that and start over if you don't want it there. So let's go ahead and finish tying up what I have. And then I will show you what I do to move over and do the rest of the quilt. Now, this size, I'm doing this on my cutting table. It's a normal size cutting table that folds down on either side. This is the center part. And so I guess the width, so it's 2 yards long. I know that because I've stretched out a 2-yard meter length of fabric along it. And then I believe it is about 42 inches wide. So you're, about your average width of fabric. Now bigger quilts, so this size quilt is really easy to do on something like this because you don't need to move it around a whole lot to be able to get to everywhere you need. But a bigger quilt, it's very difficult to kind of get on here because it doesn't have, the quilt is too long to stay the whole length on the table. So I actually use my kitchen table for doing a bigger one. And what I do is as I move it along, I will actually like fold up what I have done like this and pull it towards me so that I work this way. And next time I do a bigger quilt and do it on my table, I will definitely film it and show you that process because it's kind of hard to explain. So anyway, so let me go ahead and finish tying this quilt and then we'll get back to finishing it up. Okay, so we have gotten most of these clipped, and so when they're tied, and now we want to clip them probably about 1/4 inch, no more, no less. Any less, you will start to have the chance of these unraveling in the wash, just because the ends are so short. They don't have room to grip onto each other. And too long, and then you start getting stuff kind of adhering to them, both in the wash and in life. So now these go in the trash. So what you want to do, so now we need to work on the other half that's over there. Now I could go over there, but there's some of it hanging off the table. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to simply take both ends of this and gently pull it towards myself until that end comes up. Now, more often than not, I will actually just go and probably will just go and work from this side over there. If you don't have that option, then what you do is you actually like pull this up like this toward the part where you have finished. There we go. And that will bring it close enough to you to start working in that next section. So we're going to go ahead and finish this up, and I'm going to trim it, and then we'll go from there. Okay, let me show you a close-up of the knots. So this guy's going to come around here twice, pull it down, and then you're going to do the opposite. So instead of having it this way, you want to have this guy in front and this guy in back, coming around and going back towards the back. And twice. That's the double, double. Double, double. Makes me want a burger now. Okay, one more time. Okay, so this guy comes around here to the back. Twice. Okay. That guy goes in front, and that guy goes around that way and down. Okay, so now I'm going to, I finished the quilt. I put the binding on. I have sewn the binding to the back. Did that, you see that with my hand stitching. And now I've washed it and the quilt is finished. So thank you so much for following along. If you have questions, please let me know. I'm happy to answer any of them. The quilt tying is something that I really enjoy doing. It's kind of meditating because you're going along and tying the knots and then trimming them and everything like that. Bigger quilts tends to take a little bit of time. Sometimes I have to do them over the course of a couple of days, just because of time, and family needs the dining room table. Smaller quilts, of course, I can do on my cutting table here. So thanks again so much for watching, and if you really like this video, please hit the thumbs up, and if you want to see more, subscribe, and it'll show up in your feed. Thanks again, and have a great day. Take care. Bye.